welcome to Freedom Fighters Code Grey. This is a TV show where we discuss human trafficking, an issue happening in our communities. We often think that trafficking is taking place in other countries and other places around the world, but we don't realize it's happening in our own backyard. In fact, almost 1 in 4 people who are trafficked in Canada are under the age of 18, and over 90% of people who are trafficked in Canada are from within Canada's borders. So today, I'm really excited to have with me a freedom fighter, Penny Flaro, who's here to share her experience and knowledge of what human trafficking is. Welcome, Penny.
Hi, Michaela. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Penny, could you just share a little bit about how did you get involved in human trafficking work?
Well, I can go back 27 years, actually, and tell you about an incident that happened that I didn't know was human trafficking and didn't find out until probably 5 or 6 years ago. When my daughter was 15 and my son was 14, we took a trip to Ireland. And we stayed the first night in a hotel. And in the morning, we got up to go to breakfast. And my daughter wasn't hungry and didn't want to come for breakfast. So we stood in the doorway of the hotel room and had a little, I wouldn't even say argument, just a conversation with her about, okay, if you're going to stay in the room, that's fine today. But from now on, we're having all our meals together because this is a family trip. I noticed there was a gentleman standing down the hall, close enough to hear our conversation, but not looking, just kind of leaning against the wall. So anyway, we didn't think any more of it. We left, went down to the restaurant. We were eating our meal, and about 20 minutes later, that same gentleman came into the restaurant, went up to the bar, had a chat with the fellow at the bar, and then left. So we finished eating, we went back to the room, and my daughter was shaken. And I asked her what happened, and she said, well, after you guys left, this guy came to the door, and he said, I heard you having a disagreement with your parents. Are you okay? And she said, yeah, I'm okay. And he said, well, if you like, I can get you out of here. I can take you to Dublin, and, if you don't want to be here with your parents. And she got really scared, and she just shut the door and locked it until we came back. Thank God. Because you never, how many times in my lifetime over the last 27 years have I thought my life could have been so much different had we not had a relationship where she would just say, yeah, go on and getting out of here, and listen to this fellow. I went down to the restaurant and told the fellow at the bar. He referred me to the manager of the hotel, but nobody seemed concerned. And it just stuck with me for so long. And then in 2016, at my church, we had an intern come into the church, and he wanted to do a project. So he asked if anyone was interested in doing some research on human trafficking. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, what the heck? Yeah, I'll do that. Thinking we were going to be looking at India and, the Philippines or whatever, like third world countries or other countries that were far away, only to be horrified to find out it was happening in Durham region. So that began, and through conversations, through going to different venues to hear speakers, I realized that what had happened when my daughter was 15 was an incident, or could have been an incident, of human trafficking.
Wow, Penny, thank you for sharing that story with me. And I'm so glad too that your daughter is safe and that situation didn't become a trafficking situation. But I think some of the things that you pointed out as you shared that story are really important as we look at indicators of trafficking. And one, that's the trafficker heard your conversation, or potential trafficker overheard the conversation, and then was already looking for a way to lure and manipulate your daughter to kind of say, hey, is everything okay? And I can provide you with comfort. I can provide you with a way out. And also the fact that it took place in a hotel. We know that trafficking can happen in a hotel or motel within Ontario. So thank you for sharing that story and how that led you into just beginning this advocacy work. When you said that you started doing research on trafficking and then began to learn about, wow, this is something that's happening in our community, what were some of the things that you learned? Some of the people tuning in today maybe have never heard about trafficking before. They may have never even realized that it's a problem in Ontario. Would you mind taking some time just to shed light on what exactly trafficking is from the research that you've done, as well as what you think people should be aware of?
Yeah, I actually have kind of likened it to trafficking being the perfect storm. So you have the perfect abuser finding the perfect victim in the perfect circumstance and taking advantage of that, the vulnerability, um, and changing that girl's life forever. Now, a lot of teenage girls, there's just the way society is right now. Parents are both working, kids are home alone. They spend a lot of time alone. So girls tend to, I mean, I know myself when I was young, you just want to be accepted. You want to be loved. You want to be cared about. And particularly the girls that are most vulnerable um, really kind of stand out to someone who is an abuser, who's looking for someone um, to groom, to coerce, to be able to intimidate and manipulate into doing whatever he wants. And it's usually, well, when I first got into it, it was called lover boy syndrome. So an older man would find a young girl, say at a shopping center. There was an incident in Whitby where a girl was approached and taken from the library. So these guys they have time. They sit, they watch, they pay attention. The big malls are an issue because these guys will go to the malls and they will sit and watch. And young girls like to congregate at the mall. They might see one girl who is not as outgoing as the others. And they'll approach and just start a conversation. I had a friend who had two daughters doing Christmas shopping at the Oshawa Center. And this fellow approached them and started to talk to them, tried to get in between them. The older girl had seen him the year before, because she was 18 now, so she had seen him the year before in the mall. And so she got her sister and they started walking and they went into the chapters. Well, they went into Starbucks, got their drinks and had their names on their drinks. And when they came out, he spoke to them by name. And so they started running. A security person came up and said to them, are you okay? And they said, well, this fellow kept coming up to us. But even at a mall, the security can do nothing because this guy hasn't done anything but tried to talk to them. But those are the tactics that are used. They are hoping and preying on vulnerable young women, young girls, getting younger all the time. And I mean, we just have to be aware. It's been happening for so long and it's still increasing, which is the saddening part of it.
Absolutely. And I think you help combat a number of myths that people believe about trafficking, as you shared. Because I know often people, when they think about trafficking, if they have some sort of knowledge about it, they might think of the movie Taken, where someone was kidnapped. And we know that kidnapping can happen in trafficking situations, but that's typically not how it happens in our communities, and that it's most likely a slow process, as you mentioned, of manipulation, of grooming, of studying an individual. And I think that example you highlighted at a mall, at Starbucks, is really important, that an individual was watching and studying those individuals' lives, learning their names. And that is also a tactic that traffickers typically do. They are patient and they will wait and study an individual to identify where are they vulnerable and how can the traffickers think, how can I manipulate this situation and to lure someone into an uncontrollable situation? So thank you so much for taking the time to outline some of those tactics. One of the things that you mentioned is that often it is young girls who are exploited by perhaps a romantic partner or a boyfriend. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that. So after someone first is approached by a trafficker, how does that individual develop a relationship with them? What does that look like afterwards?
Well, they begin talking with them and they make it very casual. They walk around and just chat, or he might buy her a snack or something, and then decide to give her a number or get her number and say, let's meet, or just meet back here again another day. And then they start to buy gifts. They can buy clothing, take them out for lovely meals, things that these girls aren't used to, buy jewelry, lavishly spend money on them, and lead the girls to believe that they are falling for them. And of course, the girls are falling for the guys.
Mm-hmm. And then we know that after that happens, that love bombing, so to speak, that a trafficker often demands repayment for those things that they were given, demands repayment for the clothes or the trips or the nails or the hair salon appointments. So Penny, I know from your experience working as an advocate, I was just wondering if you could shed light on when someone's leaving a situation of trafficking, what is so important for them in their journey of healing and restoration?
Okay, well, if I can share that I worked at Safe House for 2 years. I lived in the Safe House with the survivors, and so I saw a side of things. I mean, sorry, I'm getting kind of tongue-tied here because it was very emotional. Girls want to be rescued, but not right away. They have this, you actually alluded to a trauma bond. Sometimes the girls don't even know they're being trafficked. They actually are so in love with these guys that they really think they're helping, and they still think that their future is with this person. When they start to realize, like I've seen situations where the girls, they don't get fed if they don't cooperate. They don't get to sleep. They have to ask even to go to the bathroom. Like their freedom is completely taken away from them. And yet they still psychologically, because they have been groomed that way, have that bond with these guys. And it's very hard for them to break away. It's not easy. Like for me to say, well, somebody's being mean to me, that's it, I'm leaving. The bonds that are built through the psychological trauma are so strong that it's nothing like me walking away from a bad conversation, or from somebody who, I don't get along with, or it's inexplainable. I mean, at the Safe House that I worked at, one of the main things was trauma therapy. These girls need severe, constant trauma therapy, and they need it for long periods of time and possibly for the rest of their lives.
Penny, thank you so much for just taking time to shed light on some of the things that are required in someone's healing journey and restoration, and the importance of safe housing. We're going to take a short break, and then we will come back to discuss this further. What does trauma-informed support look like? Why are safe houses so important? And what is a safe house? So we're going to take a short break and come right back.
Anthony will never marry.
If it comes to that, I'll freeze my eggs.
You should freeze your whole body if you're waiting for that.
Anthony, time is running out.
Would you marry me?
Gary's been snail mapped. We've got to go help them.
Seize them!
Patrick, what are you doing?
Free food!
back to Freedom Fighters Code Grey. This is a show where we discuss human trafficking, an issue that's taking place in our communities. Today, I have with me a freedom fighter, Penny Flaro, and she's taking the time to share with us her experience supporting survivors of trafficking through working at a safe house. So Penny, could you share with our viewers today, what is a safe house for survivors of human trafficking?
Safe house is a place where the girls can go and live. It's not known in the community, so it's very secure, very safe. The girls live in a house environment, a very relaxed environment. Yeah, all the precautions to keep them safe, and where they can live and breathe, have their own rooms, communicate with one another if they like, but have their own rooms to have their own space if they like.
And why do you think it's so important that a safe house, a home for individuals who have previously experienced exploitation, is in an undisclosed location? Why is that significant?
The girls need to feel that they are kept safe. They have been in situations where they have been manipulated. Well, bullied is not the right word. Physically manipulated, sexually manipulated, abused. So they need some place that they can go that they know no one else knows what it is, so that they can feel safe. And it takes them a long time to feel that.
Yeah, I can imagine. And just thinking about how shelters are often in locations where the community is aware of. In this situation, the safe house you worked at was an undisclosed location. What are some of the differences in a safe house than a generic shelter, for example?
Well, the first one you just hit on, a shelter is a known place. And a lot of times traffickers, if they know where a shelter is, they kind of will congregate or at least go by those shelters, because they know there's lots of shelters in lots of cities, and that's how a lot of survivors. Now, mind you, Teresa McLennan, the executive director, I watched the episode with her. She's amazing. They have such great wraparound service. They sound like they are really protective, and yeah, so you're very blessed in Barrie to have such a great spot. But most shelters are just places where people come and go, and so quite often abusers will hang around. This does not happen at a safe house. They know they're safe. There's alarms. There's a connection to the police station. So they eventually begin to relax and know that they can work on their healing because they don't have to look over their shoulder constantly.
Hmm. Now, you said that you lived in the safe house. You lived among individuals who had experienced exploitation. I was wondering if you could share a story of perhaps resilience that you saw in one of the individuals that you were supporting in the home, or a story of hope where you saw someone, as you mentioned, it's really difficult to leave a trafficking situation. Now they're in their safe house. Can you share a hopeful story for our viewers?
Well, several of the girls actually, not even having education, worked their way through with each other, actually, because they bond quite profoundly with one another, because they have a common background. They come in, they don't sleep at night because they're used to being up all night. So sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes a year, for them to feel comfortable to be able to sleep at night. But they get there. And the amazing thing is, as girls graduate and move on to more independent living, which has happened, there's been some amazing success stories. The girls that are still there and the new girls coming in, they mentor them. And it helps to heal them, but it helps the girls coming in. Because you can imagine, you're coming into a house with maybe 5 or 6 other girls, and you're used to being with other girls on the street, and you think, oh, this is going to be horrible. But the atmosphere and the way they bond and the way they help each other and how you see it healing them and healing each other is absolutely amazing. So they get to the point where they look forward to new girls coming in, so that they can share with them how much they've grown. Trauma therapy was one of the most, none of the girls that ever came into the house that I worked at had trauma therapy. And I mean, that's paramount for them. Once they started going to trauma therapy, it got worse for a while, but then it began to get better because they built the trust with the trauma therapist. There's just so many areas of hurt, and they all suffer from PTSD. A lot of them have been addicted. So that not only are they healing from their memories and their body from what they've been through, they're also having to heal from addictions, food addictions, addictions to drugs. Now, mind you, at the safe house I was at, they had to go through a drug rehabilitation program before they could come into the house. But it's not saying that they wouldn't want to go back to that. It's such a, they've experienced such trauma that they feel the need to forget.
Some of what you shed light on makes me think about how trauma isn't a linear process. Healing from trauma isn't a linear process. And so there's individuals who grow in their healing, and then maybe something happened that triggers them, and they're constantly working through very complex trauma that's happened to them and mental health challenges that maybe have arose because of the exploitation that they've been subjected to. But I love how you shared how some of the individuals in the house you were at, as they grew in their healing journey, then wanted to support and help other people who maybe needed someone to walk alongside them and let them know that there is hope and healing and restoration. And I think that's just so beautiful. Penny, from working in the safe house, what could you share as maybe a challenge that you experienced working in the home?
Burnout is a huge challenge because of living there. And for the first year I was there, it was very difficult to get relief staff to come in. It was a fairly new place. And so, and you really had to screen people because of the nature of the issues. So yeah, I find burnout. And then the other thing is getting so attached to the girls, not wanting to even go away for a weekend, but wanting to be there to help them and to go through life with them while they're there. So burnout is a very huge issue for staff. So it's great if you can get volunteers that can come in and do relief here and there.
Okay, so as a frontline worker, and you're mentioning burnout is prevalent, and even just finding the space to rest and step away from the home, what are some strategies that you employed to set healthy boundaries that may be helpful for other folks who may be journeying alongside survivors in various ways?
Well, for me, I had to learn to ask for help, because if it went along and I wasn't asking and we were short of relief staff, then it just didn't happen. And people, I know, everybody was busy in their own areas. So I had to learn to ask for help. I had to go back and find out what my passions were when I was younger or earlier in life. And I actually found that through the safe house I was at, because one of the therapies that we used with the girls was horseback riding. And I had horses for years, and I got back into horseback riding, and I found how therapeutic that was for me. So yeah, I've got a horse now, and I ride a couple times a week now. I just was out riding yesterday. But self-care is so important. You have to be able to breathe. You have to be able to get away. And even though your mind's telling you, no, I need to stay here, it's healthy to get away, to breathe, to be able to say it's okay to put up boundaries and look after yourself, because otherwise you burn out and you're no good to anybody, especially yourself.
Absolutely. It requires a team to work together to support individuals, not just one person, and learning to let go of some responsibility, but also the importance of taking care of yourself so that you can continue to support others effectively is so essential. And I love that the support you were offering to the girls in the home also offered a support to you as someone who is working full-time in this space. That is really beautiful. And I just love that through horses and through being in nature and with animals, that can aid people into their journey of healing and freedom. So what is something that you learned, Penny, that you took away from your experience working in this home?
I learned that we need to keep our eyes open around us at all times, that there are people that are hurting, and you can't just see it at a glance, but if you can look at body language, look into someone's eyes, just take a moment and smile at someone, you can see hurt, you can see pain. I just learned to keep my eyes open, to keep my ears open, to be aware of my surroundings. And I tell you, I don't go to a mall anymore, but I don't have my eyes and ears open all the time. And I mean, COVID has put a stop to that right at the moment, but seriously, we need to look out for each other. There was a saying when I was growing up, it takes a village. It does take a village. We all have to work together. And I love how Teresa said that as well. For agencies, for police services, for individuals to work together. As I said, I've been hearing about this for years, but I still have conversations and people do not know this is happening. So to be able to group together, to keep our eyes open, to be listening all the time, to be talking about it, like, which is so wonderful on your show. Like even that Mary Bonnet, when she talked about dance, and Jessica Ortiz talking about not having any knowledge, but wanting social change and doing it through film. There's always a way that we can work into that. And I think it's important for us to do that, to look for agencies, to look for places where we can help, and just as we're out there.
I think you highlighted some really important things that viewers can do actively to contribute to the fight against trafficking. You mentioned learning more and doing research, getting involved with local agencies, listening and keeping our eyes open, maybe even getting educated on what some of the signs and indicators are. There are lots of ways that all of us can collaboratively work together to be able to fight trafficking in our communities. Penny, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the show today and to share your experience and knowledge working in a safe house and just what you've learned through your own personal experiences and research that you've done. I've really appreciated hearing from you today and learning from your experience, but also I've appreciated your willingness to continue to contribute to the fight against trafficking in our communities. If you're viewing the show today and you are in immediate danger, please call 911. If you are someone who has experienced trafficking and you're looking for support and services, you can call a 24/7 confidential hotline, the Canadian Human Trafficking Hotline, at 1-833-900-1010. Again, that's 1-833-900-1010. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We are glad that you took the opportunity to learn about trafficking, and we hope to catch you next time on our next episode of Freedom Fighters Code Gray.